Declan here from King Fires and Stoves in Athy, Kildare. I'm going to show you how to light the fire in the correct manner. Starting from coal, some newspapers, some old paper, very loosely rolled up, put it in the bottom of the stove like this. Not too tight because you need the air to get in around it. On top of that, I have some very light kindling which I just usually split up just for this kind of job. Very light, very small, put it on top of that there like that, keep it towards the back. A few bits and pieces of just waste, dry wood. I have to emphasise, as you probably know, all stoves, timber must be very, very dry, and that's the absolute key in this case here. A few small pieces of wood, just in the top of the fire, start the fire going. Let me get my fire going here. It'll only take a few minutes. And the idea is to get as much heat up into the chimney as fast as we can. Get the heat in the chimney, get the fire going, get a good draw, and your fire then will be fired away for the rest of the day. Okay. Primary air on the bottom, I'm going to open it up full. My secondary air, or air wash, I'm going to open up full. My tertiary air, that will kick in at a later stage once the fire gets good and hot. All I'm doing here now is I'm just waiting for this to catch there now. As I say, sometimes depending on the draw on the chimney, you may have to leave the door slightly open. If you open it too much, you can smoke back into the room. In this case here, it's not that very cold out this morning, so as a result, I don't have to have the door open too much. I will probably see already the fires begin to take off there. I still have the door very, very slightly open here. I have my primary air open and my secondary air. The primary air takes the air in the bottom and brings it up underneath the grate. My secondary air takes the air in from the top, brings the air in behind the glass from the top of the stove. While I'm waiting for this to get going, for wood burning, the best way to get your fire going is, when it gets going, get a good bed of ambers, red ambers on the bottom of the fire. You must wait for about 10 or 15 minutes before this happens. Get plenty of heat up into the chimney. Once you get the heat up in the chimney, you've got the ambers going on the bottom, then you can start putting on the rest of your wood. For wood burning, probably the most efficient way to burn wood is close the bottom air, which is your primary air, once the fire gets going. Dry wood has a high oxygen content. You should be introducing the air from the top, not from the bottom. So dry wood, air from top, not from the bottom. If you're putting in coal or some of the harder fuels like this, then you need a little more air coming up underneath. I still have my door very slightly open. As you can see, my fire is pretty much going to start taking off there now. I want plenty of heat in it. If you find that after burning and when the stove is going, if you find your glass is starting to go black, you may not have your air controls properly open. For example, you may find that you're not opening the top one and the bottom one closed down too much, or, which in a lot of cases, people are burning damp or wet fuel. Another thing we come across is where people will have coal in a bag left outside. If you have coal in a bag left outside and it gets wet, it's damp fuel. Your fuel must be dry. All you're doing is you're building up carbon. If you get a build-up of soot around it, you don't have an efficient burn. That's what the whole thing is. As you can see here, I still have my door very, very slightly open. My kindling is pretty much taken off there. We're getting a nice little bit of heat coming up there now. What I'm going to do at this stage, I'm just going to add a few more pieces of kindling onto this here now. Because remember, as I said, the whole idea, I want to get as much heat into this as I can before I start adding my fire that I'm going to be setting up for the rest of the day. Now at this stage I'm going to close the door. I'm opening my primary air on the bottom. Of course I have my secondary air on top open. Still a nice clear view. That's not to say you're always going to have a clear view like this. It can happen depending on the weather conditions and how you get the fire going. Your glass can stain when you're starting the fire up. It's not a problem. When you get the heat up, that will clear it. As you can probably hear the crackling from the wood. It's good dry wood, and that's a key because your fire starts off and you get it going really, really quickly with that. It's too early at this stage for me to start adding my proper piece of wood. The piece of of wood I would normally burn would be similar to this here. It's good dry wood. Also, the wood must be split. This would have been in the round, obviously, originally. It's split. When you open it up, it burns more efficiently. Remember, going back to what I said, good dry wood has a high oxygen content. Very important to remember that. When putting the wood in, I'm not going to put it at this stage, it's too soon. I'll show you in 1 minute there now, okay?